So I think there's a major problem with how big corporations are dealing with AI. And that is that a lot of the people making these decisions at board level or executive level haven't spent any time on the tools. They're making big decisions about AI transformations where they want to do things better, faster and cheaper. But their only experience with AI was a free ChatGPT search 12 months ago. So their whole mental model and framework around how AI might help their organization is mapped to previous technology transformation projects like going to the cloud or building a mobile app or whatever, anchored to their previous experience of AI as a technology project. And I think that's going to present itself as a big problem over the next few years, because one of the things AI does as a technology is speeds things up. It speeds up your internal ability to execute if you're empowering teams to solve use cases, move them to a production environment, use AI tools to do things better, faster and cheaper for your customers. But it also speeds up pressure in the external environment. And I think that's what's driving a lot of the massive commercial investment in how do I apply AI to improve my operations, improve my customer support, improve my technology pace of innovation. But the issue is, if you're treating this like any other technology project without having tried the technology out, you're probably overly constrained the scope of what an AI transformation program can achieve for your business. What do I mean by that? Well, when you set up a transformation program, you generally have a vision of some end state or future state that you want a function, a division, maybe an entire business to achieve. It could be customer support related. You might be trying to push more customer interactions to become self-service via digital channels. You don't want people ringing the call center. You want much more focus on customers being able to solve problems by offering them a better mobile app, a better web portal, better products and services so they don't even need to speak to a person. All these sorts of things are reasonable goals for when you have a transformation program on foot. But when it comes to AI, there's sort of a next step, and that's so because AI isn't just a better way of building a web app, what could I reinvent in terms of how my business works where I can radically reduce the cost to serve? I can radically reduce the complexity of that operating model. One thing that we want to think about and remember when it comes to how businesses structure themselves is they're always thinking about managing costs in terms of, is it better for me to do this internally, or do I need to find a strategic partner to outsource something to? Or do I need to use a software vendor to get a platform capability that I can then modify and configure and hopefully not too much, but customize to meet what I need to do to serve my customers with the products and services I offer? Now, what happens here with AI is the economics of managing all of this outsourced overhead start to shift. Because if you have an internal team that builds your own software, that you have a developer function, if they're not already leveraging AI in how they do things, how they solve bugs, how they investigate production incidents, how they monitor and interrogate logging and monitoring platforms, you're already behind the curve. Because your best competitors have already picked up and tweaked that AI helps everything move faster. So if you don't invest more and move faster to empower your teams to use AI to solve problems, you will fall behind. There's another threat which I've spoken about previously in other videos and been writing about on my Substack quite a bit, and that's that because of the leverage of some of these agentic coding tools, you're now in a position where having the right context or industry knowledge or domain knowledge coupled with the capability of an AI coding tool means that for some things that previously were done manually in complicated processes, potentially offshored, so a team in India or the Philippines just handles all the things that go wrong with insurance claims processing, or what's another financial services equivalent, credit card chargebacks or something. Now, the old way of thinking about transformation would be like, oh yeah, I map out the process, I do this, I spin up a project, I change the settings in the core platform to reduce the incidence of exceptions, so there's more business rules being automatically applied, so there's less need for manual intervention. But that old way of thinking isn't taking advantage of the power of AI technology. Instead of having samples or worrying about what it costs to investigate something, you could instead say, well, my appetite for risk is very low. In all of these processes, I want all of the procedures and policies and frameworks and controls met. I don't want exceptions. I don't want deviations from process. And what you can do is you compare traditional automation and process implementation with the power of an AI tool to do things like, when roadblocks are hit in a process where previously a person would have had to go off and do investigation, you can set up sub-agents to start doing that as part of the process and unblock processes. Instead of things in big companies, what sometimes happens is there might be an email box where some complex investigation goes off into a black hole, and a few weeks later you get an email and a decision back. That doesn't need to happen anymore, because as soon as that roadblock's hit in a process, well, you can have an AI agent trained on every single case that has ever been seen, trained on all of the procedures and controls of your business, and trained on how all your systems work, all the API endpoints, how the files work, what good looks like, what bad looks like, what the fraud attempts look like that you need to be wary of, and making sure you don't give a false positive approval of something. It's a complete change in how you engineer how an operating model works. So an operating model is people, process, and platforms. At the moment, big corporations have lots of software, lots of point solutions, people moving things between Excel spreadsheets and coordinating over email and video calls and chat. And this sort of level up where I want to circle back to what I said at the start around a lot of people making decisions about AI transformation haven't been using the tools, is AI pushes the cost of coordination down to near zero. So that means that your appetite for wasting time on any blockage in any process should be effectively nil. Because now, across your whole value chain for how you package up your entire product and service catalog, should be highly efficient and focused on ensuring that every time a roadblock is hit, there's some sort of agent that can go off and unblock it. And sitting across the top of that, where you want to get to, I think it's still a bit early, but where you want to get to in a few years is this whole self-learning or reinforcement learning, where just like you might have tuned a model in the recent past, and you might have to for regulatory reasons, businesses are going to tune and customize how all of their agents work to suit their purpose. Now, there is one catch, which I think is quite interesting, and it shows just how the speed of these improvements in AI model capability are occurring at. And because of how long it takes big organizations to make decisions, if you decide to have a operating model that relies on one AI model and one version number, and you haven't made it model agnostic, so you might have a layer sitting above the API endpoints of the different model providers, and you might push specific tasks to each model. If you don't have a layer to monitor and evaluate the performance of how each model is performing for each type of querying, and tracking and learning over time how things are working, you might find yourself, if you just build on one model, every few months you're going to be further and further behind. So just like big organizations have legacy technology, they have massive COBOL code bases, mainframe databases, and platforms that are still doing all this stuff. And outside of Silicon Valley hype world, most of the world still runs on COBOL and Java. That's just how things are in enterprise IT. What it means though is you could see a two-speed type economy emerging where the companies where the leaders know, understand, and want to leverage AI are out competing the leaders who know they need to say that they're using AI and approve large spend to implement AI, but they constrain the scope of those programs so much and don't make the right architectural decisions that they're effectively blocked from getting to that next level of performance from an AI-first operating model where you radically reduce cost to serve and improve efficiency across everything because you're using AI as an immediate problem solver. You're not moving tasks between functions. You're taking people out of the equation and thinking across the whole end-to-end view of a value chain. Why do I need a person to look at this exception? If a person is looking at an exception and there's a checklist, there's a standard operating procedure, there's a policy and framework they need to operate inside, that sort of specialist human labour is ideally suited for AI models. The exceptions and the edge cases and the really complex things, that's where humans will still have a role to play over the next few years. But as AI model capability gets better and better, there are fewer and fewer roles where you genuinely, honestly need the human judgment and taste and all of this institutional knowledge that's built up in people with decades of industry experience. So if you're interested in this sort of thinking, I'm interested in hearing what you think. Do you agree? Do you think that it would be better if more leaders used AI tools themselves to really understand what the technology is capable of? Or do you think that this is all hype and it's just another going to the cloud IT transformation type thing? I've got my own thoughts on that, but I'd be interested in hearing from you. So follow along and subscribe. I've got links in the description below to my Substack newsletter and also a Calendly if you're interested in exploring how to unblock an AI transformation in your business. I am working with select clients on helping them identify those blockers and build a plan to overcome them. So in the next video, I look forward to seeing you.